What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be deep diving into Matthew, talking about the end days and what Jesus says about the future. I came upon this stuff the other day when I was reading through for my Bible study, and this stuff was just so good that I had to share it with you guys. So let's get right into it. So we're going to start in Matthew 24. We're going to start in verse 3. It says, "Later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and said, 'Tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world?' Jesus told them, 'Don't let anyone mislead you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah. They will deceive many, and you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but do not panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world, but all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come.'" That's the first little section of it right there. But one thing that I realized when I was reading this is this doesn't even seem real. When people read this, I feel like a lot of people are like, man, that can't happen, because our minds, I don't think, can comprehend this because we've never lived through stuff like this, right? So we can't sit here and say, oh yeah, that's going to happen one day. Obviously, it is going to happen one day, but it's so hard for our brains to comprehend that it's going to happen that I think it's kind of like a shock mode as well. Like, oh no, this isn't going to happen. It's going to be okay. We're going to be fine. And it's going to happen, right? Like, we're going to see this one day, whether we're dead or we're alive. Like, we're going to see this. This is going to happen, right? And what's scary is when it says this has to happen. Like, yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. So, like, these things are going to take place. Threats of wars. You will hear of wars, threats of wars. Do not panic, right? That's the main thing, I think, is all of this stuff, but just don't panic, because as long as you're choosing the right and you're choosing Him and you've dedicated your life to Him, then you're fine. But it is still a fearful situation because, the world is basically going to be ending. There's going to be threats of wars, kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation, famines and earthquakes, and it's just like, whoa, what is happening right now? If we continue, though, in verse 9, it says, "Then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. And many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people." I underline that because I was like, that is so important. It's not just that false prophets will just appear and just start preaching, but no, they will deceive many people, which is crazy. But they are being used by Satan when you think about it. It's a fear tactic, right? So with all this stuff going on, earthquakes, famines, wars, all this stuff that's happening, these people come up and like, hey, just follow me, I got the answer. And people are like, okay, I believe you, I believe you, I believe you. Trust me, I believe you. I don't know what to do. They have nothing else to do. They're fearful, so they just accept that, right? And it will deceive many people, which is super sad. So you need to stay on guard. That's what this is telling us, right? If we pick up back in verse 12, it says, "Sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved." That I also underlined. It's so important, because the one who endures to the end will be saved, not the one who chooses and just happens to get to the end, not the one that picks the easy route to get to the end. No, the one who endures. It's not going to be easy, right? It's going to be difficult. We're not going to just have a rainbow, sunshine, happy life until the end of times, right? It's not going to be easy. The one who endures to the end will be saved, right? And it says to the end. That doesn't mean just endures for a couple months and like, okay, well, I endured a couple months, so I got it. It's endured to the end. So until there's nothing left, right? You have to endure until there's literally nothing left to endure through, right? So the endurance that you have right now is slowly building up through all the things you're experiencing in life, so you can have the endurance to be able to push through this stuff till the end of times, right? Not to where you think you're going to be, or not endure until it gets hard, but endure through all of it to the end. And we'll pick back up verse 14. Says, "And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world, so that all nations will hear it, and then the end will come. The day is coming when you will see what Daniel the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing in the holy place. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return even to get a coat. How terrible it would be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days. And pray that your fight will not be in winter or on the Sabbath, for there will be greater anguish than at any time since the world began, and it will never be so great again. In fact, unless that time of calamity is shortened, not a single person will survive, but it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones." That right there, I think, is the scariest part, right? When it literally says not a single person will survive. Like, okay, yeah, I guess I just won't fear. I guess I'll just endure even though I know I'm going to die. It's hard to come to truth with this and really recognize this and be able to live with that fact, right? Of not a single person will survive. Okay? Yep. Reading the Bible, the more I read it and the more I get into the Bible, the more I see where people are coming from, right? Like, I see where some of these comments that I'm getting are like, it's just made up stories. This sounds like a made up story, but obviously it's not a made up story. This is going to happen one day, and the more that we push it to the side, the more we're just like, the more we know it's going to happen and we're just scared and we don't want it to happen. I think a lot of people fear of this happening, and they fear that they're going to end up in hell for eternity, so they just push it to the side and keep doing their own lifestyle. Like, they know everything, they run their life, and they push God to the side for so long, and because they just fear it. They don't want to really come to truth through it. They don't want to realize, hey, yes, this is going to happen to me. I'm not going to heaven, and so they just push it to the side for as long as they can, and eventually it's going to come to fruition, right? It's going to come out. But the most important part of that was that last line, but it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones, right? So we don't have to suffer for that long. We're not going to suffer. It will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones. Then, in verse 23, if anyone tells you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. See, I have warned you about this ahead of time. So if someone tells you, look, the Messiah is out in the desert, don't bother to go and look. Or look, he is hiding here, don't believe it. For as the lightning flashes in the east and shines to the west, so it will be when the Son of Man comes. Just as the gathering of vultures shows there is a carcass nearby, so the signs indicate that the end is near. Immediately after the anguish of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will give no light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. That part right there got me. I can't imagine that happening, right? Like, I physically don't think that our minds can comprehend the sun darkening, the moon having no light, stars falling from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Like, that gives me the chills right there, thinking that that's going to happen one day. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And then if we skip forward to chapter 25 of Matthew, and we go to verse 31, it talks about all the final judgment and everything, and there's a couple verses I want to read out of here. So let's start in 33. It says, he will place the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and then you visited me. Then these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. And then verse 41, it does the same thing, but like vice versa for the goats on the left, right? So it's like, for I was hungry and you didn't feed me, I was thirsty and you didn't give me a drink. And then they reply basically saying, when did you ever need water or need food? We never saw that. And he will say, I tell you the truth, when you refuse to help the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you are refusing to help me. And they will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous will go into eternal life. Like, oh my gosh, dude. That part right there, like, it's basically telling you what's going to happen, right? And then I have done some videos on it too if you want to go check it out on my other channel. But the end of times in Revelations, oh my gosh, Revelations is like so scary, but looking more into it and kind of getting like the eschatology side of it is so interesting, right? Looking at what's going to happen in end of times and when everything the Bible says about the end of times is crazy, right? It's going to be an experience for all of us, right? Not a good experience for most of us. It's going to be very, very terrible. But what we're learning right now and what we're doing in current, like present day, is building endurance, right? And building our faith to when this time comes, we are ready and we can go through it, right? We can endure through it. We can not have fear. We can know what's happening and we can push through that to get to the very end, right? So I think it's very important to look at this stuff. And when I was reading this the other day, I thought that I'd share all this with you guys because it's super interesting and really piques my interest. So I'd love to do more about this. Let me know if you guys want to see some more about this. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. See you later.